This is an art collage novel video. I made this series so you guys can experience the story faster. The video will focus on the character's psychology. The images are for illustration purposes only. Madam, we're back. As soon as they entered the inn's backyard, in a remote small courtyard, Ziling and the others hurriedly carried the stretcher in. There were already quite a few people gathered in the small courtyard. They were all packing their things and preparing to leave. When they saw 4 people carrying a stretcher, they were all stunned. A woman's voice came from inside. I was just about to crush the jade tablet to call you back. It's almost our turn, you've come back just in time. The door creaked open and a beautiful woman walked out. She frowned and said, "What is this?" Ziling blushed and said, "Madam, we were picking Fengshinzi in the mountains when we suddenly saw a person who had fainted in the mountains. So, saved him." A trace of anger flashed across the beautiful woman's face as she rebuked, "This is not our Tianling city. How many times have I taught you not to cause trouble? Did you just turn a deaf ear to my words?" When Ziling and the other 3 saw the beautiful woman reprimanding them, they immediately panicked and knelt down to admit their mistakes. This beautiful woman was the person in charge of their Ink Feather Merchant Association. She was called Madame Ji and had great power. The president of the Chamber of Commerce had died in an accident many years ago, and the entire Chamber of Commerce was now on her shoulders. She had always been a woman of her word. The beautiful woman rebuked, "Red Moon City is one of the 7 superpowers in the world. Now, it's a time of trouble. If we provoke anything, we may be consigned to eternal damnation. The 4 of you are getting more and more audacious. It's been a long time since you've forgotten the taste of punishment." When the 4 women heard this, their faces turned pale with fear. Their bodies trembled, and they kowtowed desperately to beg for mercy. "Mother, you don't have to blame the 4 of them too much. After all, they did it out of kindness." A white-robed man walked out from the courtyard. He was steady and powerful, and his body faintly emitted elemental energy fluctuations. He was clearly an expert. When Madame Ji saw her beloved son, her heart immediately softened. She said softly, "Zidi, you only know how to cultivate. You don't know how dangerous the world is. Besides, this is the Red Moon City, where the masters of the world gather. It's also a time of trouble. I've been worried these few days, and I can't wait to fly back to Tianling City." "Mother, you worry too much. How can there be so many evil things in the world?" Zidi chuckled. He looked at the ugly man on the stretcher and said in surprise, This person's injuries are so strange. The upper half of his head is almost swollen, and there are signs of festering. Is he poisoned?" Madame Ji was also a little shocked. It's also possible that he used a demonic-type skill, so he suffered a backlash from the cultivation method. "Let's leave the Red Moon City first. If we miss the number, we'll have to get a new card." Zidi nodded and said, "Let's go first. This man is too seriously injured. If we want to save him, we'll have to meet up with Uncle Nan and the others. With Uncle Nan's strength as a 7th-tier alchemist, it will be easy for him to cure this man." "You really dare to ask?" Madame Ji laughed. "Uncle Nan, a 7th-tier alchemist, is taking this too lightly." Everyone was talking and laughing as they walked out of the inn. Ziling and the other 3 secretly heaved a sigh of relief and broke out in a cold sweat. If the madam was angry, the consequences would be unimaginable. The other 3 women all glared at her, showing a hint of blame. Ziling laughed bitterly and could only give her a look to express her apology. The ugly man naturally didn't need the 4 women to carry him. The warriors in the family helped to carry him. The group of more than 20 people headed towards the teleportation area. Along the way, everyone talked and laughed. It was obvious that they were in a good mood as they were about to leave the Red Moon City. "I have indeed gained a lot from this trip to the end of Earth and the end of heaven," Zidi said. "I will go into seclusion after I return and try to break through to the 7 Stars Martial Venerable Realm." Madame Ji's face was filled with surprise and excitement. "If you can break through to the 7 Stars Martial Supreme, you will be a high-level Martial Supreme. Then, we will have a stable position in Tianling City." Madam G was so happy that she cried. She couldn't help but hold her son's hand in excitement. Mother, don't be happy too early. I'm just fighting for it. GZD laughed. In short, you are my pride, Madam G said. With your talent, there will definitely be no problem. When the group of people heard that GZD was about to break through to the rank of a high-level martial supreme, they were all overjoyed. As the saying goes, when a person attains the Tao, his chickens and dogs will ascend to heaven. When the master's strength becomes stronger, the servants would also feel that their status had increased. There was still a long line in the teleportation area, and they were all teleported by number. They also checked all kinds of people very strictly, as if they were looking for someone. Everyone was under the strict control of the Imperial Guards and didn't dare to make a sound. The atmosphere was very serious. The line kept moving forward, and it was finally the Ink Feather Merchant Association's turn after a while. The one in charge of the inspection was a thin middle-aged man. He looked at the ugly man on the stretcher and was shocked. He shouted, "Wow, this ghost. This is a patient from our Chamber of Commerce. His face was poisoned, which is why he's like this," said Madam G. The thin man's eyes revealed a suspicious look. He snorted and then dared to look at the person on the stretcher again. He frowned and said to himself, other than the top half of the head that looks like a ghost, why do I feel like there's something weird? What's the matter? Hurry up and let us in. There are so many people waiting in line." Just as the thin man was starting to get suspicious, he suddenly jumped up with a loud roar. He saw Zhu Jingyi glaring at him and shouting, "This lady is my friend. Are you trying to extort her?" The thin man was shocked and quickly waved his hand. "Brother Zhu, you must be joking. I wouldn't dare to do that. It turns out that you're one of us." "Madam, please, please." Madam G looked stunned as she sized up Zhu Jingyi. She didn't have any impression of this fatty. After hosting the Chamber of Commerce for so many years, he had seen all kinds of people. It was normal for him to forget about them. But with Zhu Jingyi's physique, it was impossible for him to have forgotten them completely. "What are you looking at? Hurry up and leave." Zhu Jingyi waved his hand impatiently and said to the back of the group, "Everyone, keep up. Hurry up." Madam G didn't hesitate any longer. She walked forward, paid the primeval stones, and entered the huge formation in front. Soon, the light of teleportation lit up, and the people of Ink Feather Merchant Association disappeared from the Red Moon City. Zhu Jingyi then turned around, an inexplicable look of joy flashing in his eyes. He no longer cared about the teleportation and ran into the city. Tianling City was one of the cities in the eastern region, but it was not the main city. One had to go through Long Valley City to reach there. Long Valley City was one of the main cities in the eastern region. Ink Feather Trade Union had also opened a branch here. Madam G's plan was to wait for her son to become a high-level martial honor before moving their headquarters to Long Valley City. After all, with the strength of a high-level martial honor, he would have a foothold even in Long Valley City. "Madam G, ZD, you've made me wait for a long time." The people from Ink Feather Merchant Association soon arrived at their branch. Immediately, a ruddy old man walked out with a bright laugh. Without waiting for Madam G to speak, ZD stepped forward and said, "Uncle Nan." "Uncle Nan, you don't know our pain," said Madam G with a smile. "You alchemists have special privileges to cut the queue and teleport, but we have to wait for the number." ZD hurriedly said, "Uncle Nan, come and take a look. This is a warrior we met on the road. I don't know how he was injured to this extent. Can you use your magical hand to save his life?" "This child is really insensible," Madam G reprimanded. "With Uncle Nan's status, how can he make a move at will? Let the few alchemists of our Chamber of Commerce see it." "It's fine." Uncle Nan stroked his beard and smiled. He also saw the stretcher behind the crowd. The warriors hurriedly carried the stretcher to the backyard of the Chamber of Commerce. Uncle Nan began to spread out his divine sense to check the ugly man. Everyone waited quietly. At first, Uncle Nan was just curious. As he continued to investigate, his expression began to become strange. Then he was confused, then serious, and finally stunned and at a loss. Madam G and the others watched quietly from the side, not daring to disturb him. They all felt a little strange when they saw the change in Uncle Nan's expression. "What's up with this person?" After a long time, Uncle Nan finally asked in a serious tone. Ziling hurriedly said, "We found him when we were picking Fengshinzi outside the purple cloud peak of the Red Moon City. He was already like this when we found him. He must have been injured to this extent when we were old." "Oh," Uncle Nan said in realization. "It turns out that he was injured in an ancient place. No wonder it's so strange. This person looks like he's dead yet not dead, and he doesn't look like he's alive. I've never seen such a situation before, so I'm afraid I can't help him." "What? Even you, Uncle Nan, can't do anything about it?" This time, even Madam G was surprised. Uncle Nan was a peak 7th-tier alchemist. In her eyes, he was almost omnipotent, but even he could not do anything. Uncle Nan said, "There are many reasons for people to fall into this state of suspended animation. However, most of the time, they can only rely on their own will to live. If Madam wants to help him, you can only take a 5 elements restoration pill for him to consume. Perhaps it can slightly increase his chances of survival." Madam G's face changed, and she said, "Forget it. I don't even know this person. How can I waste a 5 elements restoration pill? That's an 8th-grade spirit medicine, worth tens of thousands of gold." She glanced at Ziling and said, "This person was brought back by the 4 of you. You 4 can deal with him." The 4 maidservants were all stunned. How could they deal with such a person who was neither alive nor dead? A warrior secretly transmitted his voice and said, "Just move it to a random place outside the city and throw it away." Ziling's face turned pale and she shook her head slightly. The other 2 maidservants were also unwilling to care about it. In the end, only Bai Yun was willing to help. The 2 of them carried the person into the woodshed and temporarily placed him there. The woodshed was very simple and crude. One night, the moonlight shone in and shone on the ugly man. The ugly man's body seemed to have changed slightly. If one looked carefully, one would find that his body had begun to emit a faint golden light. His skin seemed to be emitting a soft white light. When the moonlight fell on his body, it seemed to be directly absorbed. Inside the Divine Realm tablet, due to Yunxiao's soul being severely injured, it was extremely dark at the moment. The entire sky was shrouded in gloom, as if it was the end of the world. Everyone's face was solemn. Even Duan Yu and the other elders who had come in first had never seen such a scene. The state of the Divine Realm tablet was closely related to Yunxiao's life and death. If Yunxiao died, the space would immediately become ownerless again, and the people inside would never be able to get out until the Divine Realm tablet found a new owner. Another possibility was that the Divine Realm tablet had also collapsed, and this world had flowed directly into the void, floating in the sky of the heavenly martial arts realm, and eventually died out. Or, by chance, it had slowly evolved into an existence like the 4 great celestial realms. The people in the Divine Realm tablet all looked terrible, and they all gathered at Mount Inch. However, even Yuan Gaohan couldn't solve this problem and could only leave it to fate. There was only a green shadow shuttling through the dusky sky, as if looking for something. It was the demonic dragon in its dragon form, traveling thousands of miles in an instant. Finally, he stopped in the sky above a fiery red land and landed on a huge red rock. Under the rock was a small tree that was lush and green. It was out of place in this gloomy sky. "Lil Wu, we'll have to rely on you to save her this time," the demonic dragon said. The small tree transformed into the appearance of a young child and said in shock and anger, "Don't try to target me for everything. This is a matter of life and death," the demon dragon said. "You have to be willing, no matter what." His body was also flickering and drifting. His soul and Yunxiao's soul were symbiotic, and they were bound together for good or bad. "He's overestimating himself," Lil Wu sneered. He triggered the karmic fire to burn his body. Now, his 3 spiritual and 7 physical souls are almost all burned. Even if I was at my peak, I wouldn't be able to do anything, let alone now. I remember you promised Li Yunxiao that you would give him a trace of Tai celestial qi, the dragon frowned. I wonder if it still counts. Liliwu's body trembled as he said, of course it does, but are you sure you want it now? The Great One celestial qi is formed when the world was born. If he absorbs it with his cultivation at the peak of martial arts, it's very possible for him to step into the 10 directions divine realm under the sky. If he absorbs it in his current state, he might be able to save his life, but he will lose the chance to become a god. How can you become a god if you're dead? The demonic dragon snorted. Now, other than your Great One profound qi, where else can I find a way to save his life? If Yunxiao is really dead, the Phoenix divine fire will also dissipate in the world, and you won't be able to absorb the power of the divine fire so comfortably every day. Alright, we'll do as you say. I only have a trace of the Great One profound qi, and I've fulfilled my promise by giving it to him. From now on, you're not allowed to ask me for anything for any reason. I won't come to you, the dragon snorted. This is Li Yunxiao's business. I can't promise you on his behalf. A hint of anger flashed across Liliwu's face, but it quickly turned into a helpless expression. How could he not be exploited when he was rooted in someone else's territory? After all, he had lived for countless years, while Yunxiao could only live for a few hundred years at most, and these few hundred years would pass by in no time. Liliwu said, you can leave now. I'll transfer this trace of profound qi into his body. It's enough to heal all the damage to his physical body. However, his soul is burning too badly. I can't guarantee that it can be completely restored. If even the ultimate mystical qi can't save him, then what else in this world can? The demonic dragon's expression changed. After he finished speaking, he disappeared in a flash, disappearing into the sky. Liliwu's expression turned serious, and his face soon disappeared from the small tree. In the woodshed, under the moonlight, Yunxiao's body began to undergo abnormal changes. Suddenly, a faint yellow aura appeared in his dantian. It was as thin as a gossamer and slightly rotated. If one looked closely, they would find that it was like a strange symbol that was constantly rotating. It became brighter, and it continued to give rise to traces of aura, which spread in all directions. Within his soul, the demonic dragon nervously looked over. This kind of thing that was born when the world was just born was a legendary thing even in the era where true spirits were rampant. No one had ever seen it before, and they were all afraid of its power. After Yunxiao was rescued by Jiang Churan in the end of time, Yutong began to fight with him for the control of his body, while Yunxiao continued to burn his soul with the determination to die, rather dying with Yutong. The brave one when they met on a narrow road, so Yutong naturally refused to die with him and finally yielded. After the fire of karma in his soul was extinguished, his 3 souls and 7 spirits were severely burned, and his life was hanging by a thread. Even the demon dragon was greatly affected and extremely weak. Yunxiao's will had dissipated directly, leaving only a faint soul light in a trance. It was only when Tianxi broke the seal and fought his way out from the depths of the earth and the entire immortal land was sealed that he was immediately transported out. He fell into the mountain range near the purple cloud peak and was carried back by Ziling and the other 4 girls. At this moment, the thread of Great One celestial qi was slowly spreading out in his body. It seemed that there were no changes. It gradually condensed into a small ball of qi and was still growing, but the speed was extremely slow. After a night, it was only the size of a fingernail. The demonic dragon was anxious. The people from Ink Feather Merchant Association seemed to have something to do in Long Valley City, so they stayed here. Ziling came to check on Yunxiao almost every day, and from time to time, she would put some medicinal pills into his mouth and try to make him swallow them. This morning, she came over again, took out a white pill, and stuffed it into Yunxiao's mouth. A voice suddenly came from behind her, "You're really generous, even letting him swallow a 5th-tier condensed jade pill." Ziling was shocked, and then she said angrily, "Bai Yun, you're scaring me." Bai Yun, who was behind her, sighed. "I saw you running here all day these few days, so I followed you to take a look. I didn't expect you to swallow the condensed jade pill that madam gave you. That's a 5th-tier medicinal pill, and it's worth thousands of gold. This is all thanks to the blessing of picking Fengxinzi in the Red Moon City. Madam was so happy that she gave each of us one. Ziling smiled bitterly. Medicinal pills are originally used to save people. These few days, I have continuously given him a lot of second and third grade spirit pills, but there seems to be no reaction. So I can only try this condensed jade pill. I hope it will have an effect. Even Uncle Nan is helpless, Baiyun said. How can you do anything? Besides, we're not related to him. A condensed jade pill is too much for us. I've already eaten, it's too late to regret it now. Ziling sighed. I'm going to accompany young master to the city square. Today is the start of the annual city square in Long Valley City. Young masters can look forward to it for a long time. A strange look flashed in Baiyun's eyes. She smiled enviously and said, Sister Ziling is the young master's favorite. Maybe one day she will have the opportunity to be accepted by the young master. Ziling's face was red from embarrassment. She raised her hand and hit Baiyun, you dare to make fun of me. The two girls giggled as they fought. Baiyun said with a serious expression, all right, Sister Ziling, go quickly. Don't let the young master wait too long. Moreover, what I just said is not completely without basis. Among Madam's 4 personal maidservants, only Sister Ziling is the most favored by Madam and young master. If one day you are lucky enough to be accepted by young master, don't forget us sisters. Ziling said shyly, young master is such a world-shaking figure. How could he have taken a fancy to me? There are so many women from wealthy families who want to be young master's concubine, but they have all been rejected by the madam. Baiyun blinked her eyes and giggled. Furin rejected it in order to let Sister Ziling take the position. Yeah, you're really asking for a beating. Ziling said. The two of them laughed and fought for a while more before leaving the woodshed. A moment later, the demon dragon's soul emerged from Yunxiao's body and stood in front of him. What kind of nonsense is this? He slapped his palm on Yunxiao's body, shaking the condensed jade pill out of his hand and crushing it with a casual squeeze. Although these low-grade medicinal pills had little effect on Yunxiao, he was in a life-and-death situation, and he could not afford to be affected by them. The demonic dragon was performing a few incantation gestures with both hands, setting up a restriction around the woodshed to conceal all the aura inside so that no one would notice the changes in Yunxiao's body. After that, he returned to Yunxiao's body and tried his best to stabilize the weak soul light so that it would not go out. Yunxiao's body did not seem to have changed much over the past few days, but his injuries were indeed slowly recovering. The wisp of supreme mystical qi in his body had grown to the size of an egg, hanging motionlessly in his dantian. It was night time, and Yunxiao, who was still lying under the moonlight, was also emitting a faint golden light as he slowly recovered. The egg-like Xian energy seemed to be showing some changes. A trace of power began to slowly overflow and then became stronger and stronger. It was like countless ditches and streams, gradually converging into a big river, then into a stream, and finally into the sea. There's finally some change. The demonic dragon opened its eyes and became extremely nervous. No one knew what would happen to such a legendary object, not even the Kunwu divine tree itself. The force first rushed into Yunxiao's body, clearing all his extraordinary meridians and seeping into every inch of his muscles, bones, and bones. In an instant, his whole body became bright, and golden light shone in all directions. Fortunately, there were restrictions set up by the demonic dragon in the surroundings. The entire woodshed was illuminated with a golden light, but no light could be seen outside. The terrifying look around Yunxiao's eyes began to gradually recover. His red meridians faded one by one and eventually disappeared, and his swollen eyes returned to normal. His handsome face had completely recovered, and aside from the golden color, his skin was also as smooth as jade, faintly containing a multicolored light.